Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Community Redevelopment Agency public meeting as we go over a little bit of information about our existing Community Redevelopment Agency as well as our Comprehensive Economic Development Strategic Plan. And I'm going to introduce our speakers this evening. We have Eliza Giuliano and Emily Thomas from Kimley Horn. They are the consultant that the city is working with to update these plans. And Kimley Horn was also the consultant that helped us with the finding of necessity plan and writing the original plan that we have in existence today. So thank you so much, and I'm going to turn it right over. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming. My name is Eliza Giuliano with Kimley Horn, and we'll get right into the presentation. We're talking about two different plans tonight, and we'll get into more detail on both of them. Oh, and let's see if the technology, there we go. So we're going to start by talking about the CRA master plan, then we're going to get into the needs and opportunities within that geography of the CRA. Then we'll do a brief discussion of the SEDS plan, and we'll talk more about what that is. And then the final portion of the night is hearing from you. So to introduce the CRA plan, CRA is a community redevelopment area. There is a framework provided by the state of Florida statutes that defines what you have to do to become a community redevelopment area, and that includes a finding of necessity. Essentially, you have to prove that there is a need, and you can see on the screen some of the criteria for need include inadequate roadways, low property valuations, unsafe conditions, or decline of sites generally. So it has been determined that within the CRA area, it meets those criteria and it's able to access that program. Some of the goals of the current New Smyrna Beach CRA plan are economic development as well as neighborhood stabilization through reinvestment and redevelopment. And those are pretty common goals for a CRA plan. So why would you want a CRA? Well, it provides special tools, including, for instance, Samantha, who introduced us, is a staff person who's able to devote some time and attention to caretaking of the CRA. And then one of the most important tools is called tax increment financing. Essentially, it ensures that some of the money that's collected in tax revenue, it's not a new tax, but just the existing tax revenue, gets redirected back into the CRA to keep the ball moving in terms of investment and redevelopment. This is not the first time that New Smyrna Beach has had a CRA. There was actually a prior CRA prior to 2014, but a new CRA boundary was established in 2014. So we are about 10 years out from that, looking to update that plan. So why update? One thing, we want to review progress and successes that have happened over that 10-year period. Conditions change, so we want to make sure that we're dealing with the conditions that are still relevant in 2025, not just conditions that were relevant in 2014. There were also some very specific conditions within this CRA that had to do with which areas the CRA could invest in that changed after that 10-year mark was passed, so we're able to address those more fully now. And then finally, there's the opportunity to hear from new people. So there are people who either weren't aware and didn't participate in the earlier plan, or maybe didn't live here and have become part of that new investment in the CRA area. So let's move into some of the strategies that are already in the CRA plan. And when we talk about an update, it really is an update. It's not a whole new plan. We're validating that some of those strategies are still necessary, and then identifying gaps for where there's a need to revise or enhance those strategies. So some of the key strategies in the existing plan are infrastructure, specifically for pedestrians and stormwater. There is generally smart growth strategies. Smart growth is very aligned with CRAs because fundamentally it's about reinvesting in existing places, whether it's existing neighborhoods or whether it's infill and redevelopment of properties that need a little care and attention. Urban design elements can help to make the CRA area more desirable and bring in new investment. And then one of the key elements of the 2014 plan was reinvesting in housing, so making sure that those housing structures that are there get attention so they're maintained and rehabilitated when necessary. The 2014 plan identified specific opportunity sites. We're looking at those to see if they need to be updated as part of this, this relook. And then we love to celebrate success. So since the CRA was established, we've more than doubled the valuation of all the properties within the CRA, so that's a good direction to be going. It also increases the amount of funding that's available for the CRA to reinvest in the area. And then some of the projects that have been done, and the way CRAs work with a TIF is that they build up money over time, so the longer they go, they tend to have more money to reinvest in the community. So recent projects include the septic to sewer conversion on Mary Avenue, the Bowman Center, so that's a private reinvestment that was supported by the CRA to provide new uses in an old building. And then the affordable housing project for seniors called Green Lawn Manor. That project was a collaboration that the CRA was part of. So now we're going to move into existing conditions. Emily?
First, we're going to look at the future land uses within the CRA boundary. A future land use designation determines the type of development you can expect to see on a piece of property, whether that's going to be residential, commercial, or mixed use. And within the CRA boundary, we do see a good mix of future land uses, with industrial being the most prevalent. Now we're looking specifically at the future land uses of vacant lands within the city or within the CRA boundary. And here's where we start to see a little bit more of a distinction. We see a lot of industrial and industrial mixed use. These are the properties that we can most likely expect to be developed in the near future. Along US 1, we see some commercial, and we'll take a closer look at all of this as we get further in the presentation. But just some highlights are the commercial along US 1, some medium density residential in the historic west side, and a large industrial mixed use property to the south. This is zooming in, and we also start to see the color is very hard to see, I apologize, on the screen, but there's some mixed use around the downtown that's vacant, which provides additional opportunity for residential and retail development. And we're seeing that commercial along US 1 and the North Causeway. This is a redevelopment potential of the CRA boundary. We did a building to land value analysis, which looks at the value of a building compared to the value of the land that it's on. And when we see a low ratio, that tells us that it is prime for redevelopment. If you have a piece of land that's worth a lot of money and a building that is not, that provides an opportunity for some redevelopment. And in terms of the map, anything below a 1 tends to be really prime for redevelopment. The yellows are medium, and then a 2, you wouldn't expect that property to be redeveloped. And we also wanted to note that wetlands will affect the how much a property might be able to be developed, but we did map based on a nationwide inventory, so at the local scale it might look a little different in terms of the impacts. Right, now we're going to look at the challenges and opportunities within each sub-area of the CRA.
So we've divided the CRA into 5 sub-areas. The airport area on the north, the US 1 corridor, which goes all the way from north to south. Then we have the North Causeway, and we'll talk about them in this order. We'll talk about the west side. Now, the west side includes the historic west side, but it is larger than that in terms of our analysis, and then downtown. So let's start with the airport sub-area. So some of the challenges that we looked at, and we tried to look at kind of similar challenges across each sub-area. So starting with transportation, the main transportation issue that's come up is just the entrance to the airport, particularly for people making left turns. There's no signal, so that can be a difficult turn to make either in or out. So that's something that's being looked at already in terms of whether it makes sense to have a signal, whether it makes sense to even potentially consider moving the entrance. But that's something we can also include in the discussion of the CRA plan. One of the general goals within CRAs is beautification, so landscaping is part of that. We do want to recognize that there are limitations around the airport because of the presence of birds that can be attracted by certain types of landscaping. So there's a whole book full of rules around what kind of landscaping you can do, particularly in those runway areas. But there are opportunities between those and around the airport entrance for doing some beautification. So for each of the sub-areas, we're going to zoom into this map we showed earlier about redevelopment. So I won't re-explain the redevelopment framework, but dark is more likely to redevelop, light is less likely to redevelop. The airport is a very specific condition where the goal is to have uses that are really going to benefit from being close to that airport. So those are very specific uses. And the airport is working on attracting some of those users. The airport master plan already cites some needed investments, including septic to sewer conversion, replacing some of the gas lines, as well as bringing in high-speed internet. And there's already some plans for bringing in additional airport hangars. So moving on to sub-area 2, the US 1 corridor.
Because US 1 goes basically the entire length of the CRA area, we broke it into 3 different segments. So we're starting off in the northern area, kind of close to the airport, north of Industrial Park Avenue. And here, the biggest concern is the lack of sidewalks. Once you get to Inlet Shores Drive, the sidewalk ends, which raises concerns for walkability. But there is potential to address this issue upon development of some of these properties along US 1. Looking at Lytle Avenue to Industrial Park Avenue, we observed some narrow sidewalks which are close to the street, which creates safety concerns for pedestrians, and it doesn't feel safe for people walking. They're more likely to try to drive or find another option. There's a lack of landscaping, which again can create more of a barrier between the pedestrian and traffic, and as well as provide some beautification. We noticed that some of the side streets off of US 1, which our boundary does include some of the neighborhoods behind US 1, and some of those streets are either lacking curbs or they're substandard. So there's an opportunity to restore those curbs upon redevelopment, which can help with stormwater management. Additionally, some of the bus stops are not up to current standards as they're missing the paved landing area. Now we'll look at that third segment, which is 10th Street to Lytle Avenue. And we noticed here there's a lack of high emphasis crosswalks, so it's hard to see them lots of the time, and creates another hazard for pedestrians as the drivers are less likely to notice them. There's an opportunity for cross-access connections, which can allow people who are visiting these stores along the road, they can access the sites through kind of drive aisles connecting them versus having to turn out onto that major roadway to access a site that's basically right next to them. It reduces conflict points and reduces the chance of an accident turning into high-speed traffic, and also moves cars off of that main road. There's a variety of both vacant lands along the corridor and some high redevelopment potential. With a commercial future land use, this provides an opportunity for more retail development, as well as some mixed use, which could bring some residential in as well. And you can see specifically to the north, there's a big piece of land with that is vacant, as well as some of those brown parcels, which are the most likely to be redeveloped. In some of the neighborhoods behind US 1, we see that yellow, which means medium development potential in those neighborhoods. So we'll see some more low to medium density residential in those areas. And then looking more south, we continue to see that medium redevelopment potential.
Now, getting into the North Causeway sub-area. So, of course, this is a narrow strip, but there is development on both sides of the road on the causeway. We know that there's been some real safety concerns here, including a pretty serious crash. So we're taking a especially close look at the biking and walking conditions here. One of the things that noted is there's a great shared use path. It's great to have that, but there's a lack of some of the safety signage and directional signage that would assist people with navigating that. Similar to some of the places that Emily mentioned, there's a lack of clearly marked crosswalks. You know, you want to see that bright white ladder. That's really the best case scenario for a crosswalk, and a lot of these don't have that. Either on the side of the street by the shared use path or crossing the roadway, the major roadway. Speaking of crossing the major roadway, there's only one place that you can cross that major roadway at a crosswalk, and that's at the signal. So that's a pretty long distance for a pedestrian to have without being able to cross that major roadway. So thinking about maybe some more safe crossings would be a consideration here. The other thing that you see is that there's a narrow shoulder, and sometimes that can get confused with a bike lane in these conditions. So that's another thing that we look at. Now, motor vehicle safety, we also want to look at that. Some of the same strategies that Emily talked about in the US 1 corridor are applicable here. Not quite as high speed, one would hope, but having those cross-access connections between neighboring development parcels can keep people from having to go back out on the main roadway. We know we've got that kind of frontage road that assists with that as well. There is at least one location where the medians are closer together than our engineers would advise. So looking at, certainly not duplicating that problem, and if it ever made sense to close that one median crossing, that could be a consideration. There's also some trees planted pretty close to the power lines. We love trees, but they need to be in the right place, and that may or may not be the right place. Now, in terms of redevelopment potential, you can see some of the white that's not going to redevelop, and then some of these orange areas, that deep orange, is the boat ramp area. So if you've been out there, there's a lot of undeveloped pavement around that boat ramp that is the potential to be something way more exciting. As well as some other properties that are showing up. And of course, the fact that they light up on the map doesn't mean they're going to change tomorrow. It may be the property owner doesn't want to change. It may be that it's residential and people aren't interested in moving. It just means that the financials are there that might support a change. So every property is unique. The land uses out here tend to be either commercial or mixed use, so the kind of development you would expect would be either residential or retail. Now let's move into the west side sub-area, again including the historic west side, but not solely that, which is down here. It includes the State Road 44 going out of town. This is really one area where stormwater has been something we've heard about, and we took a look at that, and it's evident that there's not a lot of stormwater infrastructure out there. So a lot of either swales, so open drainage, or not even that in some cases. There are a limited number of these catch basins that would be able to divert the water to where you want it to be, away from people's properties. And so, during these severe storm events, you can see the lack of infrastructure there to really deal with those events. When it comes to the sidewalks, as you can see on this example, there's no sidewalk, and so that's pretty typical, and there are other streets where there are sidewalks that stop and start. Looking at the redevelopment potential, the dark red here, those are actually vacant lots, so no structure on them at all. So that's obviously the lowest hanging fruit for redevelopment. Love to see people coming in and building something on those missing teeth. And then there's also some other properties, actually fewer, that are in between. We do know about some specific opportunities like this Kmart site where, you know, it's a building that's a little bit tough, and it's been tough to get somebody to have a new user in there. So that's something that we'll be looking at. The other thing we're aware of is that, you know, this is an area where you do have some housing stock that isn't in the best shape. And so what's great is there's a program, which is a home renovation grant program. What's not so great is that the reason those properties tend to be in disrepair is because the people don't necessarily have the money to do those repairs. So when they have to have a 50% match, they may or may not be able to come up with that 50% match. So moving into the downtown sub-area, so what we're calling the downtown sub-area, I want to note, includes probably what you'd think of as the downtown. I don't think we talked about this earlier, but you see how Canal Street is grayed out. Canal Street was part of the previous CRA, and essentially lots of great things happened. Flagler Street, I believe, was also part of the previous CRA. So those places have already been invested in, they've already improved, and so they're no longer part of this new CRA. So that's why that is cut out there. But behind Canal Street, there's still plenty of opportunity. You see not so many vacant parcels, but some of those darker orange parcels that are now, especially now that the land values have gone up, there might be more opportunity to put a new structure on those lots. So the north side here really is that area around Canal Street and off the North Causeway. And then south of the South Causeway is the hospital area. So I just want to call that to your attention. So what might be possible around the hospital might look a little bit different than what makes sense right around Canal Street. What's true of both of these areas is they have future land use designations that support mixed-use development, that support both retail and residential. They also are addressed by this bed and breakfast overlay district, which allows for flexibility around providing those bed and breakfast uses. Some of what's been identified as a need, so another thing that's worth mentioning in this area is this is one of the higher density areas around town in terms of what could happen, what's allowed. It's a little lower in terms of FAR. So FAR is how we measure commercial properties. So there's potential to think about allowing a little bit more FAR, maybe a little bit more height to get in some desired uses. One that's been bandied about is a boutique hotel. We also know that there's already some momentum around an arts district, and keeping that trend and getting more public art, maybe some murals, would continue to push that ball forward. So I'll let Emily talk about general opportunities.
So while we've been taking a deep dive into each of these sub-areas because they're all unique, there's also some general opportunities that we can apply to the entire CRA boundary to help implement some of these goals and achieve the vision of the CRA plan. There's kind of two different directions. One is trying to have some more flexible development standards to kind of attract that development and maximize the use of each property through shared parking, shared stormwater, and shared green space amongst neighboring developments. And as well as kind of holding those developments to a higher standard so that we are following the goals of this plan to create the quality of life that we want to see through standards such as wider sidewalks with street trees and benches to support walkability, landscape buffers to also support walkability and beautify the area, and then some architectural design requirements so that these new developments coming in here look beautiful and people who live here will want to spend time here, which in turn will benefit all of these businesses and support the economic growth that we're looking for with the CRA plan. We also wanted to do a brief overview of the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy Plan, since that is a part of this update. The CEDS plan applies to the entire city, unlike the CRA plan, which is designated to this boundary. and it will continue its efforts after the CRA plan sunsets. However, there is a lot of crossover between these. It helps implement some of the goals, or it aligns a lot of the goals with the CRA plan, such as redevelopment along US 1, looking at the airport as an economic generator, and trying to bring some of that development to the historic west side, and supporting existing businesses, as well as expanding. So through this process that we're doing, we're going to update the SEDS plan to make sure it aligns with the updates we make to the CRA plan. And we want to identify any new incentives and partnerships that can help us achieve these goals, and expand target industries to bring in some new jobs to the city. Next, we want to hear from you. And so we have a few different exercises to get you all involved and hear your thoughts on the CRA plan and where we're going from here. First is a mapping exercise. We have a few different stickers that we came up with based on some of the existing conditions and what we already know that the city has some concerns about, including open space. So you'll use these stickers and you'll place on the map where you feel there's a need for this. So we have open space, job growth, pedestrian safety, and bike safety specifically, where we need better parking management, where there's concerns with stormwater management and flooding, and where we might need more housing, and where that should be located. We also have the option for you to do other. If there's something here that we didn't think of, we have a sheet with just numbered stickers. So you just take the number, put it on the map, and then use a sticky note, write down the corresponding number, and let us know your thoughts. Next, we identified some of the priorities that are currently in the plan, as well as ones that we thought might be lacking in the currently that could be added in this update. That board is right here. You'll have these 1, 2, and 3, and you can go ahead and rank your top 3. And finally, we have a chance for open feedback on a few different topics. You'll just write it down on a sticky note. Let us know if you have any concerns or desires related to transportation, public art, the local economy and job growth, housing, stormwater management and flooding, and permitted uses. And this could be an opportunity to kind of build off of some of the things that you put on the map. All right, and we wanted to thank you all for being here tonight. We look forward to hearing your thoughts.